like the title of the video says, we're going to be covering Loki in our next few videos. And we're going to start off with Loki's first ability, Decoy. So, as a preface to most of these abilities, I do want to say that Loki is kind of an older frame, and as such, he has a lot of scaling issues. Warframe used to be a lot lower level of a game. Those of you might remember some like guns you would never equip now being meta back in the day. Mods just weren't primed back then, and that's sort of what Loki feels like. He's powerful in his own way just because he has an invisibility, but in general Loki isn't going to be insanely strong. But before we get into Decoy, we're actually going to look at his passive too. It's real quick. His passive is basically he's able to wall latch 10 times longer. The niche case that this is good for is kind of irrelevant most of the time. Wall latching is usually not profitable, and if it is, it's usually to get some sort of buff by wall latching for like 1 second and then like moving on with your life. So wall latching for 10 seconds doesn't seem to be that great to me. And it's just one of the features that he has that I think needs to have a little bit more oomph, a little bit more power. And I think you're gonna see that a lot of Loki's stuff kind of has this vibe of like, this could be really good, but whatever, right? There's always gonna be a but attached to it. So let's go ahead and look at Decoy now. So Loki deploys a holographic copy of himself, drawing enemy fire. Drain is 25, duration is 25 seconds. So 1 second per drain, basically. Pretty easy to do the math there. So when you use this, you're basically going to create a holographic decoy of yourself. Now, for whatever reason, and I noticed something's weird here, he doesn't get to have the pumpkin. I don't know exactly why, but if I were to take the pumpkin off and he gets, you know, a normal head that Loki has, he'll actually render it. So I guess when they made this, it didn't have the capability to do certain attachments like this. I just thought that was like an interesting little aside to start the video off. But in any case, we create this little holographic decoy. Now you'll notice he has a Lato. I believe the primed version has a Lex. These are purely cosmetic. For whatever reason, they didn't render this out like the holograph, probably just because it was easier to just stick a gun in their hands than to actually, you know, re-render the model. Yet another little detail as to sort of the lower, older quality when things weren't quite as well done and the teams weren't as big and stuff like that. So let's go ahead and take a look at what this thing does. So we've got some enemies. They haven't noticed me yet, but they probably soon will. And what I can do is I'm going to actually throw out a taunt over there to the left. And you're just going to get to see a little bit of the range of this thing. The range of the taunt is actually really big, and you'll see they all kind of turn and face it. Now, it doesn't last that long because you'll notice the biggest problem with this ability is its scaling. It literally has none. It has 200 health and 400 shields. The only thing it will ever be able to do for you at higher levels of play is take 2 shots. And that's only because they added shield gating to everybody. If there wasn't shield gating, it would literally get 1 shot. So some useful tactics to use this is the taunt range is very, very large, and enemies will try to kill it. So what you can do is you can actually throw it behind some things, and you'll actually see people have to run all the way through to melee or shoot them. They have to get an angle on it. And since that AoE radius is so large, it makes it pretty easy to do it for some enemies. But in general, when you're in a map, enemies are coming at you omnidirectionally, right? They're all over the place. So getting these sort of strategic time-buying decoys is not only going to be hard to do, just as a practical matter, you're going to have to be thinking about angles a lot. And it's just not worth the return that you're gonna get from getting, you know, like a weird soft 2-3 second taunt as one of them tries to get the right angle on your decoy. So honestly, that is really it for the stats of Decoy. Decoy is a very simple ability. It has no sort of defensive scaling. It doesn't deal any damage. It will fire at enemies. Let me go ahead and pause these enemies. Is that close enough? Yep. So it will fire, but it will not deal damage. So yeah, it's just not gonna be a great skill in general to use. The best you're gonna get out of it really is gonna be like the briefest moment of stopped enemy fire. Now that being said, it does have some augments. So let's talk about those augments. So first off, we have Savior Decoy. Savior Decoy, basically, whenever we cast this guy out, he will become a lifeline for us. Let me get rid of the enemies because he's going to keep shooting at them if they're there. So he will become a lifeline to us whenever we summon him. That means if we ever die, we'll instead swap places with him and he'll die for us. So this might seem like it's really good, except for the fact that this thing dies almost instantaneously on its own. So the trick to getting your Savior Decoy correct is going to be hiding it. Literally pop him at spawn and hide him. Now the problem with this is the duration of this skill is fairly long, but it is not infinite. So even if you pop him at the very beginning of the map, it's kind of unlikely that you're ever going to actually get usage out of him over the course of, you know, a minute or two, right? Like, he'll stay at the beginning, probably safe, but when you need him, he probably won't be up. And that comes to, again, a problem. I think Savior Decoy, instead of giving it a 50% cast speed, should just make the decoy last forever, possibly. That way you at least get one extra life or something like that in a mission. Now there are some interesting interactions. This is a helmet ability, so there are more options for this skill now than ever before, as well stealing other people's abilities onto you. An interesting interaction that you can perform is if you actually steal the decoy as Limbo, you can banish the decoy as Limbo. Now that does seem really cool and interesting. So basically you can banish your decoy into your pocket dimension, and then he will die for you. He will always die for you, right? Because the enemies can't get him. But that also means that enemies can't really be placed into your pocket dimension. Otherwise they just kill your drone, right? So it makes Limbo's primary functionality a little bit harder to use, actually, if you use it that way. But it is an interesting caveat. Additionally, we have Deceptive Bond. Now, Deceptive Bond is going to be... it's pretty close up there with just some of the worst possible augments there are. And to be honest with you, it's not even its fault. So what Decoy what Deceptive Bond does is it actually shares damage between you and your decoy. So if you get hit, you split that damage 50-50 and it goes to the decoy, and vice versa. Now the problem with this is the fact that your decoy literally has no HP. It just dies instantaneously. So if you're getting hit, it's literally gonna save you like a couple hundred damage, and in the course of things, like that isn't gonna matter at high levels. It barely matters at low levels. Barely. Interestingly though, the transfer amount is actually scaled from ability strength. So yeah, the transfer ratio is increased by or decreased by ability strength. Now, all of these bad things about Decoy, the fact that Savior Decoy is very hard to get usage out of, the fact that Deceptive Bond is very difficult to get usage out of, the fact that the ability itself is not that great, is the problem here. If they added any sort of scaling to Decoy where this thing has, you know, more than 2 hits on it, it's more than level 1, maybe deals damage, maybe actually applies some sort of anything to enemies, I think this could be a really, really good skill. And the fact that it's a helmet skill as well is sort of just a slap into the face of Loki, because it's just not good. I understand why they didn't give over invisibility, because that's the only thing Loki has going for him at this point. I mean, honestly. So, yeah, I think that's going to cover it for our coverage of Decoy. If I have missed anything or misrepresented anything, be sure to let me know in the comment section below. If you think of any sort of weird, wacky, crazy way to use Decoy, especially in the helmet system, let me know, because I'm actually pretty interested. I like the premise of Loki, but the game has moved on, to be quite frank. The game has moved on from Loki, and there's just a lot better options out there. So anyway, if you have anything to say, let me know in the comment section below, and thanks for watching.